Knowing your onions. Hi, welcome to Get Gardening. I'm Ian Roofe, and today we're looking at a little bit of storing produce for use over the winter month. And as you can see, we've got some onions which are being stored here in the greenhouse at East Ruston. Now, if you haven't done so already, it's time you should have lifted your onion crops and your garlic, and you should be thinking about drying them in the greenhouse or on some wire frames in the garden and storing them for use over the winter. Because you know, things like onions, yes, I admit you can buy them very cheaply from the supermarket, but it's like anything we grow in gardening. If you sort of grow fruit and veg, it's for that whole experience of setting the seed and of growing the crop and of reaping the rewards at the end. But there comes a bit of an issue as into how do we store them? Well, we all know what happens if we leave onions in a drawer in the kitchen for too long. They start to rot very slightly and they start to sprout, and we don't want it happening to these. And as you can see, they've been strung up here and left to sort of bake and to harden in the warmth of the greenhouse. And that's a very good technique to use. Now, the process starts when you lift your onions out of the garden. And ideally, when you lift them late in the season, you should be using a fork to lift the bulbs out of the ground. You'll see on the bottom here, we've got all intact roots. And that's really important. What you don't want to be doing is just pulling those onions up, because you will tear and damage the roots, and then what can happen is these can then die back, I'll show you on this one here, to the base plate. The base plate is there, you see. And if they are pulled and they snap, they die back, and that's how you get rot in the bottom there. And it's that base plate where the rot can then enter the onions. So fork them out. At home, when I grow them, I tend to just use a sort of a wire rack to sort of dry them on and then put them in the greenhouse at a later date, whatever's easiest for you. But in here, the heating process will actually get these skins to dry and to almost sort of bake really well. And you can see we can flake all that old material off. What we've got underneath is that lovely, that beautiful onion skin there, okay? The other important thing is to leave good stalks on them as well, and you can see it here. And that's for a number of reasons. If we cut the stalks too short, then once again we can get rot back into those onions and they won't keep. But also, as you can see here, having longer stalks means that they can just be tied up into bunches, and it gives a sort of way of actually supporting them. Now you can do them in sort of bunches like this, or you can do them in long sort of lengths, but this just means that the air is going to get round them, they're going to have good ventilation, and then you can come and cut them off when you want them to use them in the kitchen. But also it means that then, every so often we can go through them and we can just take all these old skins off. It's important that we keep these onions clean and then just use them as and when we want over the season. Now, the same rules apply for garlic. If you've grown garlic and you want to overwinter that, the same rule applies. Make sure it's somewhere where it's going to be well ventilated, ideally somewhere which isn't going to freeze. And make sure that you don't use things like plastic bags where they're going to sweat. Now, if we move a bit further down here, we'll see some of the red onions have been done slightly differently. And if you don't want to hang them up, then this is quite a good way as well. We use these plastic mesh trays in the garden here, and this is what a lot of our Dutch bulbs come in, but they're perfect just for drying onions in once again, because they're so well ventilated. So these are all the small ones from the crop here that we had at East Ruston. The bigger ones have been hung up, but just allowing those slatted tray to let the air flow through again. They've been here for a good month or so, I would think, and they'll be quite easy for picking. So if Alan wants any for any cooking through the winter, he can pop in here and get what he wants, and they're nice and fresh and healthy. So a few good methods for storing onions and garlic to make sure you've got crops nice and handy for using for your culinary delights. Knowing your onions. I do that nod thing, why do we do that? I'm like some of those dogs on the back of a car. Oh yes.